All right, welcome everybody. Hey, thanks for being here early. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. Appreciate everybody being here early. I'm going to give some co-hosting privileges out to some people that I may need their help with on tonight's call. I'm going to set up our translation. Tonight's call will be translated into Spanish, so if you're interested in listening in Spanish, we've got Spanish translation in the interpretation section. And while I'm setting this up, if everybody just, hey, tell me where you're tuning in from. It's always fun to hear that. All right, Albert Dunker says he can hear me loud and clear. Thanks, Albert. Where are you tuning in from today? Yvette says, yes, yes, good, good. Okay, good. We've got 100 people on this live stream right now, which is pretty awesome. And we're going to go ahead and get the recording started, and we'll get started in about 60 seconds. Do me a favor, if you don't mind, just put in the chat where are you tuning in from. I'll read a couple of these as we get ready to record. Missouri, Temperance, Michigan, Reed City, Michigan, Idaho, Minnesota. Hey, how about that? Chester County, PA, Washington State, Des Moines, Iowa, Virginia, Indianapolis, Indiana, North Carolina, Utah, Ohio, Grass Valley, California. All right. This is awesome. New Jersey, Utah, Alabama. Let's go ahead and push record. Welcome everybody to tonight's call. I'm really looking forward to tonight's call. If you came to the call hoping to learn about metabolic health, about insulin resistance, about how to fix some of the problems that you're experiencing, you are in the right place, and we are so glad that you're here. On this call, we have some of the top experts in the world, and I'm not exaggerating, on the subject of insulin resistance, and you're going to be learning a lot about that topic. If you're a brand new beginner, if that is a word that you're not familiar with or a term you're not familiar with, don't worry, you're going to become very, very familiar with it. We're going to be doing some demonstrations and explaining a protocol that flat out works better than anything I've ever tried before. Now, I'm somebody who has struggled with snacking, with overeating, with really my entire life with those things, and food addiction. We don't talk enough about the number one most prevalent eating disorder in the world today, which is binge eating disorder is what it's called. I call it kind of food addiction, and those are very similar, right? But that's something my whole life, I'm one of those guys where if I'm not on a diet, I am gaining weight and gaining it quickly. Until I started this protocol. And it has just been awesome for me. So I want to share it with you. We're setting up our translation now. And so if it sounds like I'm stalling a little bit, I am, but I think we're all good. If you need translation, go ahead and select the Spanish option in the live Zoom. We have 167 people already in the Zoom right now, and hundreds, maybe thousands more that are watching this through a restream. So thanks. We're not going to take up any more of your time. We want to dive in, and I'm going to share my screen as we get started here and kind of set the table for tonight's call. So, to begin, I'll just introduce myself briefly. This is me. My name's Trent, and this is a picture of me and my dad. And 6.5, almost 7 years ago, my dad died from stage 4 colon cancer. Now, when they found the cancer in my dad's body, it was already everywhere. It was in his colon, it was in his liver, his lungs, all of his lymph nodes. And this is like my best friend and my hero. And when I found out that he got sick, I just got desperate. I went into a panic, trying to study, read, learn anything that might perhaps save my dying father. My dad was the greatest guy in the world, but he had the world's worst diet. And anytime he would get stressed, he would turn to food. And I have kind of been the same way for a lot of my life. My dad had insulin resistance. He was pre-diabetic with high blood pressure, high cholesterol. He struggled with weight control. And this is actually a pretty good photo of my dad. He struggled quite a bit with his weight. My dad had psoriasis all over his body. He was on more medications than I can count. And so I started to get desperate and just read everything I could read on the subject of metabolic health, on insulin resistance, to try and help my dad. And I made a commitment when my dad passed away that I would take everything I was learning and try to help other people. So tonight, this call is for anybody, maybe your dad or your mom or your brother or loved one or friend or somebody you care about is struggling with their metabolic health. And I hope that tonight's call will be a great moment in their life or in your life if you're struggling that may lead you to much better health forever. Um, there are 200 people on this call, and many of them are people I recognize. We're going to prove to you that this is an incredible, incredible approach using some fiber and using some intermittent fasting to just totally upgrade metabolic health. Now, to begin, I have a guest on tonight's call. Now, this is a stranger, somebody that I've not met before, except for just over the phone. And I know she just got off work. And so I'm going to bring her onto the phone. Her name is Ari. And Ari, first off, welcome to tonight's call. Thanks. I know you've had a busy day and just got off work and are in the parking lot right outside of work. And so thank you for being on tonight's call. Um, each week, we do a little interview like this at the beginning of the call with somebody that's newer on the protocol. And you're only a few months onto the protocol, but I understand that you've had a fantastic experience so far. So, to begin, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? And where were you at with your health before you started this protocol? Uh-oh, you're on mute. Let me ask
Oh,
you to unmute. Go ahead.
can you hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pretty incredible couple of months. My name is Ari. I'm from California, San Jose Bay Area, and I started this when I was gosh, I started this when I gave up hope, honestly. I was pretty much just letting my life and my health just kind of take its own wheel and do its own thing because nothing was working. And my mom, back in December, on December 19th, I remember the day distinctly. She was like, I've heard about this thing. Just give it a shot. It includes fasting, which honestly, I kind of was, familiar with. It didn't seem like, something I was too interested in, I was like, it sounds like one of those things that the fads that people in LA do. And then she's like, yeah, but you have like this, mate and fiber and you have it before you eat. And I was like, it just sounds like a lot of work and it sounds like a scam. And she's like, no, I promise, just do it with me. I want someone to do it with me. Give it a shot. Just trust me. I would never try and suggest something that I didn't want to try myself. So I was like, all right, mom, I love you. I'll do it with you. And she had already been doing it for about almost a month at that point. And she was already kind of feeling a little different, and of course the way she monitors herself is different from me. And lo and behold, I had not told my mom that I was pre-diabetic. I had not told anybody that I was pre-diabetic. My doctors were telling me like, "Hey, we need to start considering medicine for you." And I was so ashamed. I just gave up. I was like, nope, I'm going to pretend this doesn't exist. This isn't real. And maybe, I'll get away from it somehow. And, I kind of put some blind faith in it when I started. And then within a month and a half, I went from pre diabetic to just back in the green with my blood work. And I couldn't believe it. I was so convinced that my mom had got me onto some like, dieting fad that, was like, oh, what is it? There's Slim Fast and things like that. And I was like, no way. But then it wasn't even just my blood work. I mean, my glucose and everything was incredible, but my clothes were fitting different. And I was starting to lose weight and inches. And on top of that, I have not officially weighed myself since about like maybe three weeks ago because I'm kind of trying to make it till the end of this month until I finally weigh myself again. But since December, I have lost 40 pounds officially. And I can't believe it. Like nothing has worked like this. I've been on keto, I've been on, multiple kinds of different diets. And that's the thing. That's the thing. I don't even like calling this a diet because it doesn't feel like it. I can still participate in life with my family, going out and having dinner with my friends. I'm not restricting myself. I'm enjoying just doing things normally with an added, help from the tea and the fiber and the fasting. It doesn't feel like my life is obstructed. And that's the most amazing part of it. I'm getting healthy while living my life. And that's what I love about
Of course, now I'm on mute. All right, I'm so happy for you. And
it.
I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I know it's been a busy day. I'm gonna share my screen and just kind of show a couple of pictures that were sent to me from you, I believe, or from perhaps somebody else, maybe your mom. Um,
Yeah.
but your mom also, her A1C has dropped and she's doing great. And I saw a before and after picture of her, which was incredible. And so
Yes.
you guys are kind of doing it together. But everyone, this is a before picture of Ari, and she is now down from this time, she's down 40 plus pounds. And Ari mentioned earlier today, here's the after, that she never is able to put herself in white pants because she doesn't like the way she looks in white pants, but now is loving the way she looks in white pants. And I thought that was so cool, Ari, and I'm happy for you. But the most important thing is that blood work. I mean,
Yes.
the fact that your blood work is improving and that your doctors are saying that your prediabetes is gone is just such a huge accomplishment. So, hey, we're happy for you. The best is yet to come. One thing about this protocol is as you continue using it consistently, I found that the results are often very progressive. So,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing your story. Anything you'd like to say before you sign off to somebody that may be skeptical like you were, or just anything at all you'd like to end with?
Yeah. No, I mean, just kind of leaving on a sentimental note is, um, I specifically to my mom, I had told her from the get-go. I was like, Mom, I don't believe in this. I'm just gonna do it because I love you. And then in the end, maybe sometime last month when, her, me, my girlfriend, my brother, all of us are having amazing results on this. I told her, I said, Mom, and I was really emotional. I was like, I feel like I get to keep you longer because you're on this system. I was always preparing myself for when my mom would eventually, have some sort of health complications because of her diabetes or her high blood pressure or something of that nature. And seeing all the improvements that she's having and, the weight she's dropping, but just overall her health and how I can just tell she's going to be getting off her medication at some point. I'm like, I get my mom. I get to keep my mom longer. And that is a wonderful feeling. And if there's anyone in your life that, not just you, you're thinking of you and maybe your kids, or you're thinking of you and you're thinking of, your parents. That is such a wonderful thing. And I think that's very touching for you yourself, especially your personal testimony, because you went in search of this because of your father.
Right.
And I feel like there's so many people who would really relate to that sentiment. So, really give
Thank
it a
you.
shot.
Well,
And
Ari,
thank
thank you so
you for
much
sharing your
for that.
story.
You are so awesome, and we're excited for you, and we're grateful to you for coming on and sharing your story. Thanks for being on our call, guys. If you haven't read the chat yet, Ari, go look at the chat. There's 230 people here on the live Zoom, hundreds, maybe thousands more watching this through restreams, and so you're getting a ton of love. So go check out the chat. Everybody loves you, and we're so happy for you, Ari. Thanks for being our guest tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Um, so happy for Ari. And we want to explain exactly how this protocol works and make it super, super simple. This is something that anybody can do. And one of the best things about this protocol is it's not something you have to apply for or, anybody can do it. It's completely cost neutral. One of the best things about fasting is it's completely free, right? You actually save money as you fast. And so we'll carefully explain the whole protocol as part of tonight's call. We're also going to have a live coaching Q&A session where you will be able to ask questions from experts who are so savvy in metabolic health, and we'll be able to help with a number of different things for our guests tonight, people that are on the live call. But first, I want to turn the time over to our real special guest for tonight. This is Lindsay Vent. Now, if you're not familiar with Lindsay, Lindsay is one of the founding members for the Metabolic Society for Healthcare Practitioners. Lindsay is somebody that wakes up in the morning every day, puts on her superhero cape, and spends all of her days um, helping people that are sick, people that are diabetic, pre-diabetic, people with thyroid problems, people with obesity problems. You name the problem. When it comes to metabolic health, Lindsay tackles those problems and fixes those problems for clients all over the country. She has been worked hand in hand with some of the biggest names in the scientific space when it comes to insulin and insulin resistance. And Lindsay is truly an expert. We are honored to have her on the call tonight. She's going to be talking all about insulin resistance. So this is an opportunity to learn from one of the best. I'm going to turn the time over to Lindsay. Lindsay, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen so you guys can get the visuals that I have prepared. So I'm excited to do this. Thanks, Trent, for the wonderful introduction. Oops, let me make technology work like it's supposed to. So as those of you who have seen me before talk, it's really important, in my opinion, for you to understand why. What is insulin resistance and why are we saying that what we're asking you to do is going to be helpful? And so starting out here, this is how you reach me. You can go to Venn Integrative Medicine or Insulin IQ. I am happy to help either place. So first of all, do you even need to worry if you have insulin resistance or not? Well, we're going to show you here in a minute that a significant majority of people do actually have insulin resistance. If you wonder, these are the signs and symptoms to look for. Insulin's a growth hormone. It makes things grow, including fat. But here's an example: skin tags, excessive growth of skin. Acanthosis nigricans is excessive skin pigmentation, excessive belly fat that we see all the time, these dad bods that are showing up. Excessive fatigue. If you can't understand why you're so tired all the time, this is a major sign of insulin resistance. And then lastly, this insatiable hunger. You're hungry an hour after you eat. Why is that? Well, it's because of insulin resistance. So what is insulin resistance? How do I make this make sense for you? This picture in the bottom is a picture of a cell. Every single cell in the body requires insulin, and that's why we have so many symptoms associated with insulin resistance. And so the way it works, the cell has a receptor for insulin that you can see here, and it has a doorway for glucose that you can see over here. Insulin very much works like a key in a lock. If you are trying to open the door that's locked, you need the key in order to get in. Same thing works with insulin and glucose. If your key does not work, or if your lock does not work, which is what insulin resistance is, then this mechanism goes away and glucose cannot get in. So what does the body do with it? Well, a normal person eats something and their glucose will go up, their insulin will go up, and everything comes down nice and normal. Someone with insulin resistance, their glucose has the same rise, but their insulin has to way over respond in order to get glucose to come down. And oftentimes that coming down is a significant response, and we have hypoglycemia, which leads to excessive hunger and cravings as well. And so that's where those signs and symptoms of insulin resistance come from. And so we want to improve insulin sensitivity, are the words I'm going to use as we move forward with our interventions. So another way to look at this, when we make lots and lots and lots of insulin, like I just showed with that curve, we have over storage of glucose. We store glucose in places we're not supposed to store glucose, places like our muscle, places like our fat. We're not supposed to do that. Those things, liver is not designed to store glucose. Where else this becomes a problem is how we store the fat. Fat storage hypertrophy is about 95% of us. There's a large portion of us that are hypertrophic fat storage. These are people that have a limited capacity to store fat. They can only get so fat and then they stop getting fat because those fat cells can only get so much bigger and bigger and bigger. Hyperplasia is an increase in the number of fat cells. This is actually a little bit healthier, though you can become these 600-pound life people because you are storing more and more and more tiny little healthy fat cells versus, again, going back to being the limited fat storage person who is extremely inflammatory. So we don't want to do this, and it's all from too much insulin. How prevalent is it? Why do you have to worry? Well, this study in 2019 showed that there's only 12% of us that don't have it. Another study that was more recent that just came out shows there's only 7% of us that don't have it. That means 93% of Americans have some form, whether it be mild or severe, of insulin resistance. Why does it matter? I keep adding to this slide. I stole this from my friend Ben Bickman, and I keep adding to it. All of these things floating around this insulin resistance circle, I call them symptoms. They're symptoms of an underlying root cause of an underlying disorder known as insulin resistance. So if we can improve the root cause, we can improve the symptoms, which we are also often calling them diseases, with one or two maybe interventions. So I'm going to talk really quickly about a few of the major diseases or symptoms that we look at here. Type 2 diabetes is certainly the most prevalent. This is classified with an A1C greater than or equal to 6.5. Your goal is to be less than 5.5. I really recommend, if you're not sure, grab a fasting insulin. You want this number to be less than 6. If you are above 6, no matter what that reference range tells you, if you are above 6, then you are likely insulin resistant, despite what your doctor may tell you. This A1C number, I always like to point out, because an A1C of 6.5 down here that's diabetic, actually, if you look at the number, it's average blood sugar of 154. That's quite high, but non-diabetic is only an average blood sugar of 151. It's really kind of an arbitrary number, and that's why this insulin number is so much more important, in my opinion, especially early on. Hypertension or high blood pressure, this is another one. This comes from Ben's book. There's a couple of ways that high insulin leads to high blood pressure. The number one reason is increase in volume. Your bloodstream is a closed system, just like a hose that has an opening and a closing. If you have a closed system and then you increase volume, which we do with excess aldosterone from excess insulin, then you're going to increase pressure. We also have the issue with constriction or inability to dilate. That comes from both nitric oxide as well as vessel wall hypertrophy and narrowing. So two reasons, both caused by insulin, can be improved by insulin, lead to high blood pressure. Coronary artery disease or issues with high cholesterol is another one that we look at very frequently. Most of you know that we've all been told back in the day that if you eat saturated fat or if you eat cholesterol, that it's just like pouring grease down a cold pipe. It's going to clog your arteries. Well, 100% not true. That theory is completely gone. What we do know is inflammation associated with what we call dyslipidemia, or a really poor triglyceride to HDL ratio, is actually the true cause. So you want to take your triglyceride and your HDL. This happens in a normal lipid panel that you get at your annual exam. Take your triglyceride and divide it by your HDL. In Canada, multiply by 2.3. And then you can figure out what your ratio is. So these are my numbers. 84 divided by 83 is about 1. Like Trent said, I do this all day long, every day. Really common numbers and actually considered normal. For a triglyceride, for example, is 150, and an HDL, for example, is 50. For them, that person, their ratio is going to be 3.0. Well, to be a rock star, you want to be 1.0 or less. To be not insulin resistant, you want to be less than 1.5. If you are above 1.5, you need to get going and improving your insulin resistance. Alzheimer's disease or type 3 diabetes, and this actually includes all kinds of dementia, not just Alzheimer's. This is caused by insulin resistance of the brain. The brain is a very, very picky thing. It really only likes two fuel sources. Fuel source number one would be glucose. Fuel source number two would be ketones. We know that insulin resistance prevents glucose from getting into the cell, including the brain cells. So if you have insulin resistance of the brain, you can't use glucose. You can take this one off of your list of things that you can use for fuel. Well, if you don't intermittent fast, or if you don't follow a ketogenic style of eating, you also don't make ketones. So that one comes off of the fuel source. So therefore we get brain dysfunction, cognitive dysfunction. So we want to improve this by improving the insulin resistance and finding some time to make some ketones with some intermittent fasting. Fatty liver, this NAFLD stands for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. This has become a major problem. We know that it's the #1 cause of hospitalization related to liver disease. Out there, this surpasses alcoholic fatty liver. It surpasses Hep C. It's become really, really common. It's a very big problem. The worst part about it is most people don't know they have it. It is not easy to measure on lab. The AST and ALT that you'll see on your lab results do not become elevated until your fatty liver disease is quite severe. Fertility, I deal with a lot of fertility patients. So the number one cause of fertility in women is PCOS. You can see a lot of the symptoms here are similar to the symptoms of insulin resistance because they go hand in hand. What happens is when we have high levels of insulin, we are unable to use an enzyme called aromatase. That leads to inability to convert testosterone to estrogen, and that's what leads to the facial hair, the weight gain, the acne, things like that in women with PCOS, but it also leads to the inability to ovulate. So that's where these polycystic, we call it the string of pearls when you look at it on ultrasound, that's where that develops, because if you can't ovulate, those cysts will continue to develop and never be released. Next, low testosterone and ED. There is lots and lots of information on the inverse relationship between insulin and testosterone. The higher the insulin, the lower the testosterone. I've seen this hundreds of times in men looking at lab results. So if we get insulin down, testosterone goes up. This helps obviously with sperm production. If testosterone is low, we don't produce enough sperm. The other factor is just like in blood pressure. If we don't vasodilate, we are unable to have normal erectile function and ED ensues. Next, I did a whole bunch of extra slides for this and I kind of rushed through the other because I really wanted to get into GLP-1. This is a, hot button topic anymore. All of these drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, et cetera, known as GLP-1s. I want to talk about what these are and why they are good and why they are not so good, depending on how you're getting them. GLP-1 is an incretin hormone, meaning that we make it in our incretin system or our GI tract. The benefits, as you can see here, are multifold. They don't just impact our stomach or our appetite centers, though they do impact those. They impact our kidneys and our liver and our fat tissue and all of these things. And so you can see over here, it's going to suppress appetite, improve satiety, improve lipolysis, which is fat burning. So you're going to burn more fat. Muscle efficiency means you're going to get more out of your workout. You're going to lower inflammation. Increase in brown fat leads to increase in energy production, particularly heat, which means you're going to be wasting calories, but able to also generate more heat, which is good for the body. And also decrease glucagon, which can be confusing to some people, but for patients who have high blood sugars that we cannot explain, it's a very good possibility it's related to excess glucagon. So bringing this down is very helpful in reversing diabetes. So where can we get some GLP-1 in a place that we like? Well, we certainly like Unamate. It's a wonderful place to get GLP-1 benefits. My friend at Insulin IQ, Ben Bickman, actually just recently did a study specifically on the product from Unicity. And he had some really great findings that he presented in March, but there was one that he didn't present that I want to share with you now, but I'm going to let you hear it from him.
Lindsay, we don't have audio, so let me have you pause it. And if you click on your share, and there should be an option there to share audio.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, share audio. Go to more, go to your share, and then go to more, and then there's a little thing that says share sound or share audio. And if you can't find it, you can just maybe paraphrase what Ben says.
Okay. I don't think I'm going to be able to, I don't see it. I don't have my share on here anymore. I just have pause. So, okay. Well, I will paraphrase. He pretty much says here, and if anybody wants a copy of this video, I will send it to you, that in his studies that he has not published, or else I would have shared the actual published results, that they found an increase in GLP-1 from Unamate by 70%. So huge, huge number. So let's see here, make that go away. Okay, so what is this? I'm just really quickly, because I don't want everything that I say going to be coming from Ben Bickman. Yerba mate is obviously what Unamate is made out of. And so it consists of all these wonderful things, a little caffeine, theobromine, phenolic acids, etc. The phenolic acid has this thing in it called chlorogenic acid, and that's the one that helps with the GLP-1 benefit. We know it's insulin sensitizing, and we know it stimulates GLP-1 production. Stepping away from Ben, there are study after study after study that I went out there and found that do show improvement in body weight, waist circumference, obesity, blood pressure, glucose, insulin, cholesterol, etc. So it's not just the unamate, but remember the unamate is a concentrate of this, so it's even better, that helps with what we're looking at. Briefly, I want to talk about the GLP-1 agonists. And so these are synthetic GLP-1. This is not your body's natural production of GLP-1, which is what unamate is. This is a synthetic GLP-1 that we're injecting into the body. And the problem here is that we are actually achieving supernatural levels of GLP-1 by doing this. And what's the problem with that? Well, all of those things I mentioned earlier, we're getting in mass amounts. We're getting gastroparesis. You can see here, I talked about delayed gastric emptying. Well, a slight delay is not a problem, but when you get severe delay with supernatural levels, you can have significant problems. Nausea and vomiting, constipation. We know there's black box warning out here on these for thyroid cancer. The big ones that I think are the most important, and when I talk to my patients, when you have significant rapid weight loss that is unhealthy because of its kind of a starvation mode kind of dieting that we're doing with these drugs, you lose muscle and you lose bone. And what I tell to people is, do you really want to trade your love handles for osteoporosis and sarcopenia? My answer would be no, because you don't gain those things back unless you're a young buck who can continue to lift weights and do things like that. I did put in here all of these different drugs over here. The most popular is obviously Ozempic, the one that you hear the most. Ozempic and Wegovy are the same thing. Oh, it's not even on here. Zepbound is another one that's the same thing as Mounjaro. Those ones are the new ones that are the super, super high doses. These other ones are a little bit lower dose, and some people actually need them. We certainly don't want to shame anybody who's on these drugs and need these drugs, but we really want to be aware of how do we boost this naturally, maybe instead, in order to eliminate negative side effects, but yet do something that's good for the body. So if you have questions, if you want more information on this, please reach out. My email's here for both places. I'm always happy to help, and I hope you guys got something out of this call tonight.
I certainly did. And I know this stuff pretty well, but I learned a lot, especially about the GLP-1 stuff. So thanks so much, Lindsay. And we're going to bring Lindsay back for the Q&A here in a moment. And by the way, if anybody's watching this who does not have a physician that you're working with, maybe you don't have blood work, maybe you're scared to get blood work, maybe you don't know how to interpret your blood work, I would just refer you to Lindsay. She is an absolute pro, and her MO is to help people get their problems solved naturally without drugs whenever possible. And she is a fantastic, fantastic person to work with. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen, and I want to explain the protocol. Perhaps as I do that, my goal is I'm going to just pretend that every single person listening to this has no idea what this protocol is, how it works, and you are all here for the very, very first time. And so I'm just going to kind of set the table and explain exactly what we are doing with this protocol. After I do that, I'm going to do a demonstration and kind of do a little experiment. And then I want to give you some proof. It's important for anybody that's watching this that may be skeptical or unsure that you get some proof, because that's belief building and convincing, right? And then we'll have a live Q&A. So here we go. Everybody in the world is familiar with white rice, right? But what most people don't know is that wild rice actually looks like this over here. So around every single grain of rice is something called the bran, which is the fiber part of the plant. But food makers actually remove the bran, and for the most part, we only eat the white part. This is what wheat looks like. And in nature, wheat has lots and lots of fiber. But food makers take out all the fiber so that they can make processed foods like white bread. Every sugar, every carbohydrate in nature, without an exception, comes packaged in fiber. Whether you believe in God or Mother Nature or evolution, regardless, we all have to agree that anytime in nature sugar appears, it always comes together with fiber. So, for example, this apple is mostly sugar and water, but this sugar and water is packaged in fiber. And the fiber is very important. Okay. If you remove the fiber, let's say you juice the apple, you're left with just the sugar water, right? And somebody that struggles with weight control or blood sugar control, somebody, Ari mentioned she was pre-diabetic and she's now no longer a pre-diabetic after just a couple months on the protocol. If somebody struggles with blood sugar control, with insulin resistance, if somebody struggles with weight control or appetite control is a big one, if you eat an apple, no problem. But if you take the same apple, matter of fact, it would take three of them. It would take three large apples to create 1 cup of apple juice. If you drink the apple, now you've got a problem. Your blood sugar goes crazy, you get brain fog, you feel even more hungry, and you can't figure out what is going on. And the difference is the fiber. Okay, so everybody go with me here. Let's say there was a contest, a pizza eating contest, all right? And, there was $1 million on the line. And if you could eat more pizza than your neighbors and friends, you get the $1 million, right? However, going into the contest, the rule is that you have an option. Option number one is before starting the pizza eating contest, you either have to eat 3 large apples and then start the pizza contest, or you can drink 1 cup, 1 little cup of apple juice, and then you can eat the pizza. What would you choose? What would everybody else choose? Well, of course, it would be much better if your goal is to eat as much as possible to just drink this apple juice. Because, if you eat the 3 apples, you won't even finish the third apple. You'll be so full. That's because apples are very satiating, and the satiation all comes from the fiber. Okay. Even sugar itself in nature comes packaged in fiber. Now, food makers over the last 50 years have been doing one thing. They've been doing a lot of things, but one of the main things they've been doing is they have been removing fiber from the food supply. Why on earth are they doing this? Why would they want to remove fiber from all of our food? Well, let's look first at some facts, okay? Health benefits of fiber. If you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, fiber is your friend because it's what helps with blood sugar control and weight management. Fiber can lower your risk of heart disease and some cancer. What's the number 1 killer in the world? It is heart disease. What's the number 2 killer in the world? Cancer. Why are they taking fiber out of everything if that's what protects us from heart disease and cancer? Fiber is specifically what helps us control our blood sugar. It is specifically what helps control blood sugar spikes and insulin spikes. More on that in a second. Fiber is what protects our heart. It prevents our body. Fiber prevents your body from taking in some fat and cholesterol. Sounds pretty good. It's what lowers triglyceride and cholesterol levels. Fiber is what maintains digestive health. It improves gut health dramatically. And because of the missing fiber, because it's being removed from everything, we have a gut health epidemic, an irritable bowel syndrome, and a mental health epidemic. And fiber is what keeps you feeling full and helps with weight management. Aha, maybe this is one of the reasons why the food makers want to take fiber out of food. Because when fiber is missing, we can eat and eat and eat and never feel full. When you drink the apples, you don't get full. It is basically just sugar water. And most of our food nowadays, most processed food is sugar water. It's just pure sugar, pure glucose, pure carbohydrate, no fiber. So when you do this over the course of 50 years to an entire population, if you slowly remove fiber from the food supply, you're going to end up with a nation full of these problems. And sure enough, right now, 1 out of 3 in the United States is either pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic. Heart disease, the number 1 killer in the world. 1 out of 5 has irritable bowel syndrome. And when you have IBS, you almost always get anxiety or depression. And 2/3 of adults are overweight. Taking the fiber out wasn't such a good idea. But there's a silver lining. There is a silver lining. And let's do a little demonstration of silver lining here. In my hand, I have a packet of pure soluble fiber. This is a blend of different fibers from different plants. And this is what has been removed from the modern diet. And because this has been removed from the modern diet, we're all getting sick, we're all becoming fat, and we're all getting diabetes. Not just in the United States, even in Asia. Right now, 50% of Chinese adults in China are insulin resistant pre-diabetic. When you take fiber and you consume it in your diet, let's say that you have lots of fresh veggies, fresh fruits, whole veggies, seeds, herbs, plants. When you have that in your diet, the fiber goes into your stomach and it creates a gel. So when you have a garden salad with all those fresh veggies and herbs and seeds, you actually get a gel that creates a lining in your gut. All right. And I'm going to prove it here. Okay. So when you take fiber and you mix it with water, at first it's very liquid. I mean, it's about the same consistency as that of orange juice. But I'm going to let this sit for just a few minutes while I continue explaining this. And we're going to come back to this and I'm going to show you something that should make your jaw drop. Okay. Because this is being removed from our diet. Now, there was a science company in the United States. Formerly, you guys may be familiar with the name Rexall Drugs. You remember the old Rexall drugstores? So Rexall came out with a blend of plant fiber back in the 90s that they said was going to change the world. All right. And sure enough, let me share my screen here. Sure enough, this has now been studied, and the Rexall guys were right. If you have the right types of fiber before your meal, and this has been proven in clinical studies now, if you have the right types of fiber before your meals, your blood sugar does not spike, nor does your insulin. This is something of critical importance to anybody that struggles with weight control, blood sugar control, or any related condition. For women, if you have PCOS, for men, erectile dysfunction. Lindsay talked about fatty liver. She talked about all the associated problems. If you can control blood sugar, it all gets easier. And we can do that with fiber. But what's more is we have doctors now, Jason Fung, for example, who are reversing obesity, type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, and lots of related conditions every single day. Reversing it, not treating it, reversing it. It is gone. The people don't have type 2 diabetes anymore. Now, he has written about how to prevent and reverse these things naturally, and for the most part has been laughed at by the medical community because it doesn't fit their narrative. I mean, they want us to believe that these are chronic problems that we're all going to have for the rest of our lives. I mean, do you believe that for a second? I hope not. Because in Jason Fung's clinic at the University of Toronto, most of the patients with type 2 diabetes have a complete reversal of the disease and are off all medications in 3 to 6 months. Well, how does he do it? How is that possible? I thought type 2 diabetes and prediabetes were irreversible. He is doing it for free using intermittent fasting. What Fung figured out is when we started eating and snacking all the time, we started bathing our body in blood sugar, spikes, and insulin. And when you have too much insulin, your body doesn't function properly. Lindsay just gave one of the best explanations of insulin resistance I've ever seen. So if we know that with some intermittent fasting, we can fix problems like obesity and diabetes, and if we also know that fiber makes all of this much, much easier and speeds up the results, what we're interested in doing with this protocol is combining the two. Let's combine fasting with fiber. And that is what this protocol is all about. We are combining some intermittent fasting with fiber. All right. Now, I want to explain how this works, and then I'll get back to my demonstration. So, most of us that are following this protocol, and if you have not started this protocol, buckle up. You are going to absolutely love this. All right. It's called Feel Great because one of the first things you'll notice is that you feel fantastic. I mean, I feel younger, I feel sharper, I feel more productive, I feel faster, I feel lighter on my feet. I mean, I just feel wonderful. Okay. And that's why it's called Feel Great. So here's how it works. If this is breakfast and this is lunch and this is dinner, what most of us are doing is we are skipping a meal each day. And for most people, the easiest meal to skip is breakfast. Okay. Now, when we skip breakfast, we are extending our overnight fast, right? We had dinner, then we went to sleep, and we were fasting while we were sleeping. And now it's time for breakfast. And instead of eating, uh, egg McMuffin or getting a Starbucks or whatever, instead of burning that for fuel, we want to burn our fat for fuel. We want to eat our love handles for breakfast. Now, contrary to popular opinion, when we are fasting, we are actually not starving. We are not starving. Our body is still getting calories. Where are those calories coming from? They're coming from our love handles. This is coming from fat. The body stores fat in the first place to use it as an energy source, a fuel source when we're fasting. So we're going to skip breakfast. Now, when you skip breakfast, you save $5 on what you were going to buy for breakfast, right? And so what we've done with this protocol that is so clever and makes it cost neutral and affordable for anyone is we create $5 out of thin air with fasting. We skip a meal and we take the money that we save on fasting and we use it to buy some things that will make this easy. Every diet I've ever tried in the past, I've failed eventually. Whether I failed it after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, I would eventually fail. And the reason why is because it all boiled down to me, my willpower. My willpower on some days is really good. But if I don't get a good night's sleep, if I'm under a bunch of work stress or personal stress, my willpower starts to dwindle and I cheat. And I've been stuck in this cycle for most of my life where do good, do good, do good for a little while, and then just struggle and spiral out of control. And then muster up the willpower to do good, do good, do good for a little while, and then spiral. And this is the cycle that I was repeating. What we're doing with this protocol is we're taking willpower out of the equation. We want to make it easier for people that struggle. So, some people can just eat clean and exercise and that they love it, right? For people like me who struggle with snacking and overeating and dietary discipline and don't jump out of bed to go to the gym every morning, like many people do, if you struggle with those things like I do, there are some ways to make it easier on those of us. Okay. So the Unimate that Lindsay referenced is used to make fasting easy. Unimate makes me completely forget about food. Matter of fact, when I'm sipping the Unimate, I feel like I can pretty much fast forever. Okay. Now, the Unimate, you can start your day with it in the morning in place of breakfast. Some people like it hot, others like it cold. But I sip it and I have more than one, sometimes 2 to 3 a day. And you sip it slowly. And in addition to making you forget about food, it has the chlorogenic acid benefits. Well, what are those? Lindsay talked about the GLP-1 component, that it increases GLP-1 by as much as 70%. But chlorogenic acid is amazing stuff. It plays a role in regulating glucose, lipid metabolism, improving insulin resistance, and reducing the risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. Okay. It can reduce fasting blood glucose, improve glucose tolerance, enable weight loss, prevent weight gain, and improve blood pressure in hypertensive patients. The wide range of potential benefits of chlorogenic acid include its anti-diabetic, anti-carcinogenic, and anti-inflammatory and anti-obesity impacts. Simply put, this is a natural alternative to many of the drugs that people are taking. And I'll just kind of hammer that point home with one study. There was a study done. I'm just going to grab a piece of it because I need to stay on track here. We got to open up the Q&A here in a moment. This study was done where they looked at chlorogenic acid and they were specifically looking at what it did for people who are insulin resistant or diabetic or pre-diabetic. And the one of the cool things that they mentioned in the study was that chlorogenic acid, this is so cool. Chlorogenic acid is a novel insulin sensitizer that potentiates insulin action similar to the therapeutic action of metformin. Am I saying that by sipping Unimate, a person can naturally get many of the benefits that metformin gives without any of the side effects? I'm not saying that. The scientists that wrote this paper are saying that, right? So we do we sip the Unimate while we're fasting, okay? The fiber you can have before your heaviest meal each day, or if you're a fiber junkie like me, I have it before every meal, okay? The fiber is something that I believe is going to change the world. Back to our example. The thin orange juice like fiber has now become very thick. If you've noticed, it coats the plastic on this bottle. And I'm going to dump it here into a bowl to just demonstrate what happens in our stomach, or what's supposed to happen in our stomach when we have fiber. This Cheez-It represents the processed food diet, the modern food diet that we are all eating way too much of, okay? This is fat and carbohydrate. In fact, it is processed carbohydrate and fat. But when we first have fiber, and then we eat the Cheez-It, or any carbohydrate for that matter, any food for that matter, it gets coated. It gets coated in the fiber. It creates a gel around the carbohydrate, okay? This slows the digestion of the carbohydrate, which helps slow the release of glucose, lessening the glucose spike. It also helps block some of the fat absorption. It helps block some of the cholesterol. It is incredible. It feeds a blend of different fibers that feeds all the bacteria living in your gut. It is like nothing I've ever had before. And when you combine the intermittent fasting with the fiber, I'll just show you. I mean, and I'm going to ask for some proof here. I mean, there are 254 people just on our Zoom call right now. Who knows how many people are watching through the different restreams? So I want to show you some proof, but I actually, more importantly, want to ask you for some proof. So do me a favor. Whether you have, if you're watching this and you've already started the protocol, okay, I really, whether you've been on it for a week or a month or a year, if you or somebody in your household has been using this protocol and has noticed a measurable result, okay, a measurable result, positive result, if you would just do me a favor and put a sentence or two in the chat, I want to read some of these. Okay, now, I don't want anybody to exaggerate. The truth is enough. If you've been using it, share what you've experienced, and I want to read some of these. And then we got to get to the Q&A. Trent is talking too much, which is, surprise, surprise for those of you who know me. But I'm trying to do better with that, and I want to get onto this and explain this, and then get to the live Q&A. Okay, so I went on this protocol, and my love handles started to disappear. Right? I started talking about this protocol. Hopefully my screen share is working. I started talking about this protocol with my friends, with people that I know, people that are strangers. I started to post about it on social media. I got literally hundreds and hundreds of people saying they reversed their fatty liver disease, people saying they've lost over 50 pounds despite having Hashimoto's. This is Crystal in this case. Crystal's got a great story. Hundreds of stories of people getting off their metformin, getting off their drugs, getting off their insulin. And I'm not exaggerating. There were literally, I get these every single week from people I've never met in my life that say, hey, Trent, I just got my results. I went from an A1C 8.0 to a 5.3. My doctor said I don't have diabetes anymore, can lose the metformin. I literally have gotten hundreds of these messages from strangers who I've never met. And now I'm starting to get them from friends and family and people that I love that have been on the protocol. Let's hear from you. I'm going to read a few of these, and then we'll open up the Q&A. So, Lindsay, I'm bringing you in now so that you're locked and loaded, ready to go for the Q&A. But, okay. I'm going to read some of these. I won't be able to read all of them. Headaches are gone. I've lost 61 pounds, says Debbie Saunders. Troy Hatch, I've lost 28 pounds and 4 inches off my waist. Crystal Griffin, I've lost 58 pounds. I'm off multiple medications for things like hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, hypertension, inflammation, depression, and anxiety. My triglycerides are down from a 216 to a 69. My HDL is up from a 60 to an 83, and my insulin resistance score went from a 3.6 to a 0.08. My thyroid antibodies are down from 3,600 plus to less than 400. I'm 54, but feel like I'm in my 20s. Roberta DiPetta says, yep, I've lost weight. I'm down 4 sizes. Lucy Warren, 35 pounds down. Kelly Rawl says, no more hypothyroidism. Cody Krisman, one of my best buddies, lost 75 pounds, reversed his insulin resistance. Allie Payne, I've lost 38 pounds since December. Damon Cerruti, 60 pounds down, maintaining my healthy weight now for 8 months. Brain fog's gone, sleeping better. This protocol gave me my life back. There are no, I'm not exaggerating, and all the 250 of you that are in the chat can see that there's at least 30 more comments here, maybe more, like 50 more comments here that I'm not going to have time to read. This protocol is different than anything I've ever seen. If you use it properly and are consistent and give it enough time, it will work for you. Sometimes people expect to lose 50 pounds in the first 2 months because they heard somebody else did. Throw that out. If somebody else did it, good for them. Okay. Be consistent, stick with it. Give it 90 days of consistent use. And if you use it properly, it will work for you. In fact, the people that make it, the manufacturer gives you a 90-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. So if you just use it properly, it will work for you. Okay, we got to get into the last 5 minutes of Q&A. If you are on this call and you have a question for the expert Lindsay, we also have another expert here. I'm going to see if I can bring her on. If you've got a question, we want to take a few questions, raise your hand. There is a way to raise your hand and ask a question, and we will bring you onto the live. If your question is not concise, we may try to make you speed up the question. No offense. All right, Trevor Gregory, you're up first. Go ahead, Trevor. I'm inviting you to unmute.
Yes. My question was, my wife, I was just wondering about the protocol and how it would help with her lupus. And we noticed that the doctor said that she's insulin resistant.
I'm on Victoza.
And that she's on Victoza, and that it's also been affecting with her epilepsy and the migraines. And we were wondering to know if this would definitely improve with all those things.
Lindsay?
I would like to say yes, 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 and yes. I have seen amazing results with insulin lowering strategies when it comes to migraines is huge. Any neurologic disorder is huge. Autoimmune disorders huge, and the insulin resistance obviously will improve. So if you want the best results, you got to go low carb as well with it, but it works wonderfully.
Okay, because that's what I was going with, because I'm tired of my wife always feeling so depressed and feeling like she's a walking pharmacy. She's had epilepsy since she was 16, and she's got the VNS system in now, and her migraines and seizures have still been out of control. We're trying to get the VNS dialed in. The doctor's like, oh, now you have a weird blood disorder, you have MGUS, and it's just a trickle effect that keeps going on. And I just want my wife to be back how she used to be.
Yep. Give this a try. I bet you're really happy with the results.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay.
Right, thanks, Trevor. All right. Lynette Wrighthouse, also known as, it looks like, Coach Nettie. Hi, Lynette. We're going to invite you to unmute. You go ahead with your question.
Hi. Yes, I was wondering, okay, we're talking about intermittent fasting. So when you start your first, say, meal, how do you work that in, say, with a full nutritious meal?
Want me to go?
Lindsay?
So intermittent fasting and time restricted eating are oftentimes interchangeable, but they're not really. Time restricted eating is what this is. So what we really want to do is get you to a 16-8. So 16-hour fast overnight, 8-hour eating window during the day. Make sure those meals we want to feast and we want to famine. We need to kind of do both. So we are getting adequate nutrition and calories, but also activating that autophagy that comes with fasting. So that's how I usually recommend it. 2 large meals during your 8-hour eating window, 16 hours of fasting with tea.
And prioritize protein and fiber at mealtime. At least that's what I do. What I've personally done is I prioritize protein and fiber, and that really, really helps.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Lynette. Appreciate you coming on the call, and great question. All right. We have a couple more questions that have come in through the chat. And one of them is this something that will work? Hold on, let me find it. How will this affect type 1 diabetics?
I think it's great for type 1 diabetics. The less insulin you require to inject, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So if we can limit the amount of glucose that's coming in with fasting, and 2, limit the glycemic spike with fiber, you're going to have less insulin requirement and better outcomes long term.
Thank you. Another question: how much caffeine is in the Unimate drink? Please compare it to coffee. So yeah, I'll answer that one. The Unimate we drink slowly. So it has about the same amount of caffeine as a premium cup of coffee would have, maybe a little less caffeine in the Unimate than coffee, but we drink it very slowly. We stagger it over time. And so even though I'm fairly caffeine sensitive, I have really enjoyed the Unimate, and I'll stretch it over several hours. And so the caffeine is staggered over that extended period of time. And I think it's just love it. I mean, I have 2 to 3 every single day and love it. Okay. We're going to try to get 1, maybe 2 more questions in. Olivia Marin Gasca, go ahead.
I just had a couple questions. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm taking a couple different medications. For PCOS, metformin. I have also Hashimoto's. So I'm taking levothyroxine, vitamin D deficiency. So I'm on vitamin D, and I'm just also taking regular multivitamins. Is this something that we can also take with the Unimate and not have any different reactions, or is that something we need to take up with our doctor and let them know that we're going to go ahead and be taking this product as well?
So yeah, you sound like my fertility patients. So no, you were fine to take the Feel Great system 100% with all of those medications and with fasting. So no worries there. I do want to say too, I want a put in a little plug. InsulinIQ.com right now has a 10-day free trial. So you got 10 days of exposure to myself and our amazing coaches to ask all these questions. So if you go to InsulinIQ.com, we do a Zoom every single day. You can get on and come ask, and we're happy to do that. 10 days free, no risk.
Yeah, and if anybody needs second opinion on blood work, I encourage you to reach out to Lindsay. She's awesome. And she's been she is doing this. I am not paying her to be on this call. She is doing it because she's very serious about insulin resistance and believes in what we're doing. And we're going to change the world together. So thank you, Lindsay. Last question is going to come from Dawn Redmond. Dawn, I invited you to unmute. Welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question.
So my daughter has an autoimmune disease. She has hydronitis is what I think is how you pronounce it. And so she's lost quite a bit of weight. So she was pregnant. She started off at 150, and because of this hydronitis, she's lost weight and she's down to 113. So my question is, she's fearful to take it because of the feeling full when you take the balance. So how do you recommend we proceed with that? She took it for a few days, but the nurse came in and she was like, "Oh, you don't need to eat to full. You need to eat to get full." And so I need to figure out how I can assist her with what this nurse has now told her. This wound care lady has now told her.
So my advice on that would be to not fast. I wouldn't fast, but I'd still incorporate the tea. So make sure she's eating at least 3 meals a day, and then spread out the balance. Do a third of a packet with each of the meals in order to limit that.
And I thanks, Dawn. And I might just add that, when people have special medical conditions, we want to be really careful. We're not their doctor. We don't want to recommend something contrary to their doctor. And so they should either work with their doctor and ask their doctor questions about integrating the protocol, or they can reach out to somebody like Lindsay, or, get a second opinion and see, but some of these questions, we really need to know more about the situation before a professional like Lindsay can answer it. We need to end this call. We're at the hour mark, and we're actually 2 minutes over. If you had a question and we weren't able to get to your question, please feel free to reach out to me directly or Lindsay directly. I see somebody saying, what about hidradenitis suppurativa? Yeah, there's lots of people that have said this is reverse that for them, but lots of great questions here. I want to get to these, but we can't get to all of them. If you or somebody that you love is struggling with your metabolic health and you want to help them or yourself get past it, we hope that you'll come to these calls. We do them every Wednesday. We do them for you. We're trying to change the world. And if you saw the chat, I think we gave you proof that that's exactly what we're doing. Use it properly, be consistent, and it won't let you down. And Hope you come back next week and invite anybody that you know that's struggling. It can help them. They'll thank you later. All right, everybody. Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, Ari. Have a